Hi dear friends, we're back again with our last video and possibly 2 videos of the series of the 5 main psychic categories. And I'm here to talk about clairsentience, or being an empath, having clear feeling. So before we get started, if you haven't looked at some of the other videos in this series, be sure to check those out, as well as the introduction, which kind of goes over all of the different psychic categories at a high level. And I also have information on my website available to you. And just before we get going, I'll just briefly recap what the other types are. So we have clairvoyance, clairsentience, which is what we're going over today, clairaudience, claircognizance, and clairgustance. So be sure to check those out to learn more. So being an empath is probably the most common and unrecognized psychic gift. And it's just like it sounds. It means that you are empathetic towards people's feelings and emotions. You understand them, you internalize them, and it can impact you both positively and negatively. And I think unless you have a good handle on it, it's probably going to end up negatively impacting you. And the reason is that when you start understanding and feeling other people's emotions, you're going to take those on. And if you haven't realized that you are an empath, you may think it's your own emotions. You may have thought, well, I'm just depressed. I have something wrong with me. I'm always tired. I'm exhausted. I can't, function. I'm feeling upset for no reason. I think a lot of people would jump towards seeing their doctor and getting on antidepressants, things like that, in order to cope. But there are better ways to cope if you're able to, by starting to learn about this ability and how to deal and to protect yourself in day-to-day life so that you're not feeling so drained. So like I said, there's kind of the two parts, the good part and the bad part. So the bad side, let's just go over that again. So being depressed, being tired, that kind of thing. The main reason is, and it can happen, actually, I'll say this first, is if you live, and usually when we're younger, we live more with a group of people, or we live in an apartment building with a lot of people around. We don't really have the luxury of being able to get a house and be sort of apart from other people. When you live in an apartment building with people right next door and right upstairs and right below you and on either side and all sides, their energy is getting pushed out just all the time. The same with yours. And especially if you have thin walls, things like that, that's just coming straight through. If you're feeling really unhappy, it could be because you're picking up on all of these other energies that are constantly surrounding you. I mean, we go to work, or we go to school, we go anywhere, we're surrounded by people. And all of this affects you when you're an empath. Whether or not you want to admit it, you will be affected. So there's a few things, and I'm not going to get into it in this video, but you can look it up on how to sort of protect your space, sort of create your boundaries at home. And it starts by creating those boundaries in yourself. But there's also physical things you can do, salt and crystals, that kind of thing, that can protect your actual living space. But it starts with you taking that responsibility to say, yes, I know that I'm taking on these things from other people. It's not mine. I don't want to take on these things. And that can really help. So on the good side, being an empath means that you have the ability to put yourself in another person's shoes. You know if they're happy, you can sense if they're sad, you know if they're frustrated, you know if they're depressed, you know if something's going wrong. And it doesn't matter if they tell you what's happening in their life, you may just get that sense about it. I know that my fiance is an empath, and he'll say, it smells like something's going on. I can't fool him for a second. If I'm upset, he will immediately be able to sense the difference in the air, and that is part of being an empath as well. The other thing with an empath is you're sort of like a walking lie detector. You know when people are telling you the truth, when they're lying. And so that's a really good trait that you can develop. I think the key thing when you're an empath, though, is just recognizing how to control it. Because when we're dealing with emotions and moods and feelings, it's really can have a negative impact if you're not careful on your life. So again, accepting that responsibility and taking the measures you can to sort of create boundaries for yourself is really going to help you. So I'm going to split this into 2 videos because there are many types of empaths. I just wanted to go over at a high level sort of how you can be affected when you're an empath, but then we're going to get into each of the types. So I currently have a list of 8 types of empaths, and you may be one or you may be a combination. I know for me, I'm definitely a combination, but I think people have ones where they're stronger or ones that they've never experienced pieces of being an empath. So we'll look at the degrees of the empath and what categories there are. And I haven't captured them all, that's for certain. But I've tried to create a comprehensive list because I know when you go online and you're trying to learn about being an empath, there's a lot of information out there and it's definitely not complete. It might be from other empaths trying to figure out their own empathic skill. And so without having that sort of really good list to start with, it might just end up being more confusing, especially when terms are mixed and matched. So a lot of people might call some of the 5 psychic categories that we've gone over an empathic skill. And while certainly an empath and being an empath plays an important part in these categories, it's not necessarily just an empathic skill. So with the empath, it's really focused on emotions and emotional understanding and being able to put yourself in another person's shoes. So be sure to check out the second video. We'll go over those types of empaths. And of course, make sure you look at the other videos in this series. And if you haven't already, visit www.iclairvoyant.ca and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again. See you.